Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're digging into Roots and Resilience Services.
Right. A program really focused on healing for women veterans and, importantly, their children too.
Exactly. And we've got some good sources here, their own program documents laying out the services, and also info from their pledge page.
Yeah, that gives us insight into the mission, the fundraising, the whole vision.
So, our goal today is really to wrap our heads around their approach, how comprehensive it is for this community, and, the thinking behind their methods.
Okay.
Let's maybe start with the need. Why is a program like this necessary?
Well, it jumps right out from the materials. There are some really specific challenges women veterans face when they return home.
You mean beyond the general transition issues?
Yes, particularly around stable housing and mental wellness. These seem to be key areas.
And there's a specific statistic mentioned, right, about housing.
Yeah, it's quite stark. Roughly 30% of female veterans who have children face housing insecurity.
30%. Wow.
And that's within 5 years of leaving the service. But here's the really striking comparison.
Okay.
Female veterans are more than twice as likely as male veterans to experience homelessness with their children.
Twice as likely. That's significant.
It really is. And you can see how that kind of instability, often layered on top of difficult service experiences,
Mm-hmm.
well, it creates a risk
A risk of what?
of intergenerational trauma.
Hmm.
Basically, the effects of trauma potentially being passed down, impacting the kids as well as the veteran parent.
That makes sense. So how does Roots and Resilience try to address this? What's their solution?
Well, a core piece seems to be their residential internship program.
Okay, residential, so on-site housing.
Exactly. It's described as family-centered accommodations.
Mm.
It can house about 3 to 5 families at a time.
And what are the living arrangements like? Is it communal?
It sounds like a mix. Each
Uh-huh.
family gets private bedrooms, which is important for, personal space.
Right.
But there are also shared areas, a community living room, a kitchen. It seems designed to foster some community connection alongside privacy.
Okay, so not just a roof, but an environment. How long do families typically stay?
The average is around 12 months.
A full year.
Yeah, which suggests it's intended to be more than just emergency shelter. It's a period for deeper work. And they specifically mention post-graduation planning.
Ah, so helping with the transition out as well.
Right. And this whole residential piece is integrated into what they call their sanctuary programming.
Sanctuary programming, that sounds therapeutic.
It definitely leans heavily on therapeutic services. That seems to be the foundation.
Let's get into that healing approach then. They mentioned something called trauma-informed ecotherapy. Sounds interesting.
It really does. The idea is using nature, connection with the natural world, as a core part of the therapy.
But specifically for military trauma.
Yes, and the trauma-informed part is key. It means the whole approach understands how trauma affects people. So it's designed to feel safe and empowering, not re-traumatizing.
So it's more than just like going for a hike.
Oh, definitely. It's evidence-based.
Huh?
They list things like individual ecotherapy sessions, group healing circles held outdoors, forest bathing, which is about mindful immersion in nature,
Okay.
therapeutic gardening, using their waterfront location for water-based healing, even seasonal nature rituals. It's quite holistic.
That's a wide range. Is there any data on how well this works compared to, say, standard therapy?
Yes, they actually cite a pretty compelling statistic.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, 82% of veteran mothers in their ecotherapy programs reported reduced PTSD symptoms,
82%. Okay. And the comparison?
compared to 41% in traditional therapy settings.
Wow. Okay. That's a big difference. It really highlights the potential there.
It certainly makes you pay attention.
So alongside the ecotherapy, they also mentioned integrated family therapy. How does that fit in?
Well, the integrated part means they're looking at the family as a whole system, not just treating the veteran in isolation.
Right, because the trauma affects everyone.
Exactly. So this involves things like working on parent-child attachment, doing family systems therapy often out in nature, tying back to the ecotherapy,
Mm-hmm.
using play therapy for kids dealing with secondary trauma, support groups for siblings, teaching co-regulation techniques.
Co-regulation, like helping each other calm down.
Yeah, basically skills for managing strong emotions together as a family. And they also have specialized therapy for survivors of military sexual trauma, recognizing the specific needs there, especially when children are involved.
It makes a lot of sense to treat the family unit, especially thinking back to that intergenerational trauma risk we mentioned.
Definitely. And there's another statistic linked to this. It suggests untreated PTSD in female veterans can increase the risk of anxiety disorders in their children by 5 times.
5 times. That really underlines why the family focus is so crucial.
Absolutely.
Now, therapy is one thing, but they also seem to value peer support quite highly.
Yes, that's another strong component. It's structured, not just casual chats. They have trained veteran mentors involved.
So what does that look like day to day?
Things like weekly healing circles, specifically for the women veterans, informal community meals to build connections, residents sharing skills with each other.
Oh, that's nice. Learning from each other.
Yeah, and a formal mentorship program pairing residents with mentors. Plus, crucially, virtual support for graduates, so that connection doesn't just stop when they leave.
That continuity seems really important. Okay, let's shift focus specifically to the kids for a moment. What's in place for them?
They have a dedicated children's healing program. It's designed to address the unique stuff military kids often deal with. Parental deployments, moving a lot, family disruption, maybe secondary trauma.
And how do they address that?
Through things like age-appropriate play and art therapy to process experiences, using nature for emotional regulation, tying back again.
Right, the ecotherapy element.
Therapeutic adventure activities, animal-assisted therapy. They have animals on site, apparently.
Oh, cool.
Plus practical things like academic support and help with identity development, which can be complex for military kids.
It really sounds like they're trying to cover all the bases for the children's well-being. What about the really practical stuff for the parents, like childcare? Can be a huge barrier.
Huge barrier. And they seem to recognize that. They offer cooperative childcare services.
Cooperative, meaning.
It seems like an on-site system, possibly involving parents participating in some way alongside after-school programming. The key thing they mention is that the providers are trauma-informed and understand military culture.
That's critical.
Yeah, and they also build in parent-child activities, specifically designed to strengthen attachment. It's all part of enabling the parents to actually participate in their own healing work.
Makes total sense. You remove those practical barriers. Okay, so moving towards empowerment. I see they have a career development center.
Yes, focusing on employment support, but tailored for female veterans.
What does that entail?
Well, one standout is a 12-month health steward certification program.
Health steward? What's that?
It sounds like training veterans to support community well-being, giving them skills and maybe a new sense of purpose, alongside practical things like skills assessment, resume help, interview prep.
The usual career services stuff.
Right, but also connections to veteran-friendly employers, mentoring for entrepreneurship, an on-site computer lab, and aiming for flexible work options.
That health steward certification sounds like a really interesting, perhaps empowering path. What about other education, like college or technical training?
They cover that too, with education advancement support, helping residents navigate things like the GI Bill.
Which can be notoriously complex.
Exactly. Connecting them to flexible higher ed programs, scholarship info, even educational assessments for the kids. Recognizing school transitions can be tough.
And speaking of complex systems, navigating VA benefits, that's another big one.
Absolutely. So they have a benefits navigation service, personalized help with VA applications, healthcare system navigation, disability claims, connecting to legal aid if needed, and advocating within those government systems.
So really trying to cut through the red tape for them.
It seems like the goal is to remove as many external stressors as possible so the focus can be on healing.
It feels very holistic, which leads nicely to their holistic health center. What goes on there?
This seems to focus on integrating mind, body, spirit healing. So you see things like trauma-sensitive yoga.
Ah, movement that's mindful of trauma triggers.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Also nutrition counseling, meditation, complementary therapies like acupuncture or massage, help with sleep, which is often disrupted by trauma, pain management alternatives, and specific women's health services.
And I saw mention of a community garden and teaching kitchen. That connects back to the nature theme again.
It does, yeah. It reinforces that food is medicine idea, but also community building.
How so?
Well, they offer organic gardening instruction, specific plots for residents, cooking classes using what they grow, education on nutrition for trauma recovery. In fact, community meals featuring the garden harvest, and even teaching skills like food preservation becomes a shared activity, a source of healthy food, and another therapeutic outlet.
You know, listening to all these components, it really strikes me how interconnected it all is.
Yes. It's not just a list of services. The ecotherapy seems to ground everything. The family therapy works on relationships. The peer support builds belonging. Feels like a whole ecosystem designed for healing.
An ecosystem, I like that. So as families move through this, what about reintegration, preparing for life after the program?
They have a community building program for that. Structured activities aimed at building lasting support networks outside the program, too.
Like what kind of activities?
Monthly community service projects, cultural or recreational outings together, holiday celebrations, continuing community meals, even things like interfamily childcare arrangements and skill sharing, building those practical community ties.
And does the support end when they officially graduate the residential part?
It seems not, which is really important. They have ongoing aftercare support. That includes things like monthly alumni support groups, crisis intervention if needed down the line, yearly reunion retreats to maintain connection,
Oh, nice.
ongoing opportunities for nature connection, graduates mentoring new residents, and even access to the sanctuary grounds for visits.
So maintaining that tie, that sense of belonging, that feels vital.
It really does, for
Yeah.
long-term stability.
And one last program element, advocacy and education. What's the aim there?
This looks like taking the personal healing journey and potentially turning it into broader change.
How would that work?
Opportunities for residents or graduates to join a speakers bureau, the organization consulting with other service providers, research partnerships, providing training specifically on military sexual trauma, and general community education.
So empowering veterans to share their experiences and advocate for change, while also educating the wider community,
Exactly. It's moving from individual recovery towards systemic impact.
which of course requires funding. This brings us to the pledge campaign you mentioned, run by It Takes a Village Ministry.
Right. And their overall mission, Takes a Village's mission, is about inspiring and sustaining communities that empower natural healing body, mind, heart, and soul. This fundraiser is the practical step to build a physical space for roots and resilience.
And they use that striking statistic again on the pledge page, don't they? The housing one.
Yes, they highlight that 92% of women in nature-based therapy programs achieve stable housing after a year.
Compared to 47% with traditional interventions, it's worth repeating because it's such a huge difference.
It really drives home the potential impact. You asked earlier why nature might be so effective.
Yeah, any thoughts on that from the source material or related research?
Well, while the documents don't detail the why extensively, research in ecotherapy often points to nature providing a sense of calm, a non-judgmental space,
Uh-huh.
opportunities for grounding, sensory experiences that can bypass purely cognitive processing, and maybe a feeling of connection to something larger. For trauma, especially military trauma, that nonverbal experiential aspect can be incredibly powerful compared to just talking in an office.
That makes a lot of intuitive sense. So the funds from this pledge, where are they going specifically?
They break it down quite clearly. The biggest chunk, $650,000, is for purchasing the property itself, 16 acres, waterfront, with buildings already there.
Okay, so the physical sanctuary.
Right. Then $200,000 budgeted for renovations and $150,000 for the first 3 years of operations.
So clear goals, significant amounts. If you're listening and feel moved to support this, how can you do it?
The pledge page, hosted by It Takes Village Ministry, has a direct donation link and a QR code. Makes it pretty easy.
And they encourage sharing it too, right?
Yeah, definitely. They suggest sharing on Instagram, X, LinkedIn, Facebook, even to text, WhatsApp, email. They provide some pre-written text to make it simple, just copy, paste, and share.
And just to be clear, for everyone listening, the support goes to It Takes a Village Ministry, whose mission, again, is nurturing these self-sustaining natural healing communities. They're based in Greenwood, Florida.
So essentially, supporting the fundraiser helps build this specific roots and resilience community, which embodies that larger mission.
Okay, so wrapping this up, this deep dive into roots and resilience really shows, I think, an incredibly thoughtful and comprehensive model.
Absolutely. Weaving together the nature-based therapy, the community support, the family focus, the practical help. It's very layered.
Yeah, not just one thing, but how they all work together. That ecosystem idea you mentioned.
And those statistics, especially on PTSD reduction and housing stability through the nature-based approaches, they're really compelling. They suggest this model has serious potential.
It really does. It makes you think, doesn't it, about the power of these community-focused, nature-integrated solutions for complex issues like veteran trauma.
For sure.
And maybe this is the final thought for you to ponder. Given what seems to be working here for veterans and their families, what other complex societal challenges, what other groups might really benefit from this kind of holistic, interconnected, nature-based community approach? Where else could this model make a real difference?